Hi, my name is Flora Lu, and I'm an Associate Professor of Environmental Studies and also Provost of College 9 and College 10. My research takes me to the Ecuadorian Amazon, where I examine the impacts of extractive industries on the daily lived experience of native Amazonian societies. Here at UC Santa Cruz, we are a Research One university, and we have some of the best research faculty in the country. And oftentimes, faculty believe that there's a mutual exclusivity between their research and their teaching. But what I found is that my best teaching happens when I incorporate my research into the classroom, because that's when I'm the most informed and the most enthusiastic. So let me give you an example. In the course that I've taught for both Latin American Latino Studies and Environmental Studies on Amazonian societies, I use both the stories that I've had over 20 years of doing field research in these places, as well as the material culture of many of these societies. So if you can imagine that in classes the students will get an opportunity to actually use the procurement technologies that native Amazonians incorporate in their hunting practices. So students will have an opportunity to use a blowgun or to see a spear. They have the opportunity to touch the skulls of important prey animals such as monkeys, peccaries, and other creatures such as tapirs. Invariably, as a result of my Amazonian Cultures and Conservation class, a few of the students are really captivated by the phenomenon that I study in Ecuador's Amazon region. These students have gone on to help me with field research and data analysis and cleaning. Some of them have expressed an interest in perhaps writing their own independent senior thesis on the topic. And the best students have accompanied me into the field, into the Amazon itself, where they have had the opportunity to meet some of these indigenous families. These students, upon completing their senior theses, have been invited back into the class as guest speakers to basically show how UCSC students can be the experts. They can be the ones not only in the classroom sitting in a chair, but in the front of the class giving the lecture. For the student that comes from educational inequity and tend to be underrepresented in places like UC Santa Cruz, the biggest barrier to their success is quite different. Increasingly, we have more of these students at UC Santa Cruz, and that's a powerful thing because it speaks directly to our mandate as an institution of higher education designed to serve the people of California. For them, and again to generalize, there tends to be concerns about their sense of belonging and their sense of worth here at this institution. Especially for first generation, students of color, and for students that are international, there tends to be almost, I would characterize, a culture clash, this sort of sense of culture shock when they come to a place like UC Santa Cruz. And I almost liken this akin to what I feel, what I have felt as a researcher working in the Ecuadorian Amazon, where the rules do not seem obvious, how you make things happen, cause and effect, how you lobby for yourself. These things are quite puzzling and don't really reflect the experiences that you've had. I've heard students who come from this background of educational equity tell me things like, Dr. Lu, I don't speak out in class because I don't have anything valuable to say, that everyone else is smarter than I am, so I just want to listen to the other students. So this fundamental sense of not feeling that they have value, that they truly belong in this institution, is a tremendous barrier to student success. So campus can feel quite foreign, and sometimes, dare I say, even hostile to some of these students. I've seen students that come from underrepresented and under-resourced schools feel that they are not safe enough to even advocate for themselves. These are the students who, with very, very legitimate reasons, of, for instance, financial hardship, medical issues, family issues, when they struggle, they tend to disappear. They tend not to reach out to faculty or other units on campus to be able to advocate and try to stay in school, or at least to find some accommodation. But they will withdraw, and then we won't hear from them, and invariably they will fail their classes or have some other academic consequences. And this is critical and very sad, and a failure of our ability as an institution to reach out to these students and help them overcome this academic culture shock. The first day of class is really important, and unfortunately, oftentimes in classes, we use it just as an opportunity to go over the syllabus and then excuse the class. When I start a class, I try to lay out my expectations for the students and also my commitment to them. So I'll start the class by telling them something about myself, my career trajectory, my academic experiences, the kinds of research interests that I have, and some reference perhaps to some of the challenges that I've overcome personally. I ask students to tell me about themselves. I hand out index cards and I ask them a series of questions for them to fill out on the first day. Not just their basic contact information, but what they hope to get out of the class. For instance, sometimes students will want specific coverage of a topic, and if I can incorporate that into my lectures, I'm more than happy to do it. But in addition to that, I try to ask them to tell me a little bit about what's going on for them at that moment in time, whether or not they're under some extreme stress or have these other challenges or working 2 part-time jobs to be able to afford their education. Because this enables me to put their learning within a specific personalized context and to reach out to students that I feel may be at risk for not doing well in the class. First day of class, I also try to remind students that yes, while UC Santa Cruz is not just evaluation-based anymore, that we do have grades and that evaluations are optional, they have the right to ask me as their professor for an evaluation. And what I think that tends to do is to encourage students to be more proactive in reaching out to me during the quarter because I need to have something to talk about in their evaluation. And that also gives them more ability to talk about their performance at UC Santa Cruz that goes beyond just a letter grade. Finally, on the first day of class, I think it's worth mentioning to a student that if ever they have an interaction with me as the professor, an interaction that they feel like they come away with feeling somehow unsatisfied or even diminished by that interaction, that I ask for their faith and trust in me to be able to come to me and tell me about that. Because sometimes as professors, we're really busy, we may not be as mindful about how we're communicating with or interacting with students, and these students can have an interaction with us that leaves them feeling diminished. And it's important to explain that we are not perfect as professors, but that we do try to create a really respectful and productive learning environment. So to open up a space for them to feel safe, to come to us with any grievances or complaints or just any sadnesses that they may feel as a result of interacting with us. The best class that I've ever taught at UC Santa Cruz was the hardest class I've ever taught. And I think that oftentimes is the case, that the experiences that we have struggled with, that we found the most difficult, are oftentimes the most rewarding. The course was called LALS 100A. It's one of the core courses for Latin American Latino Studies, and it had the really inviting title of Social Science Analytics. The required components of LALS 100A were quite ambitious. Students were asked to take 10 in-class quizzes, write 4 papers, take a midterm, and then do a final research paper that was over 10 pages, single-spaced. When students struggled in the midterm, and many of them did not pass the midterm, I gave them the opportunity to redo those problems that they had missed, demonstrating to me on paper that they understood the material upon revising their midterm. Because I didn't feel that it was fair to give them one opportunity to demonstrate their knowledge and not have a larger growth mentality about being able to master this information. This class represented what I try to do as a professor, to make students comfortable enough with me and our dynamic so that I can make them uncomfortable in the class in terms of pushing them academically outside of their own set of expectations for themselves. I just wanted to lastly share with you one of the comments on the evaluation for LALS 100A that I found was just really, that I found to be really inspiring. The student wrote in her evaluation, "Professor Lu was so enthusiastic. I wonder how she has so much energy. When I felt like I couldn't do something, her energy motivated me. I felt like she believed in me more than I believed in myself and made me follow through on my work. She cares so much about us that I had no choice but to try to care about her class as much as she cared for us. I felt like she believed that I could do everything she asked of me. I felt like when she pushed my limits, it was with strong purpose." When we think about what it takes to become a good teacher, I think this is really fundamental, that we can do these things by being enthusiastic about the subject matter and even more passionate and enthusiastic about our students.